I think this is the part when you talk, Steven.
Oh, do I have to talk? Is that what a podcast is? Wow.
I don't know. This may or may not be our first time. I have no idea.
First time. No, it's not our first time. We are not podcast versions.
No.
No, but we are here once again.
Yes, we are.
At Cinematic Adventures here on the Cinema Discovery Project. I am Stephen Billings, a.k.a. Movie Man 16. That's the tag I put on a lot of my other things. But I'm also here with my co-host. He is the Cabzilla, as
Yep.
he uses that username a lot. Mr. Andrew Cabral, how you doing?
I'm doing good. Glad to be back. The 2 weeks went by a lot quicker this time than last time, I felt. So we're more locked in this time than we were last time. We were a little rattled by personal things that were happening. Steven was making a big life-changing move. I just had a birthday. But now we're back in it, and it's officially July 1st when we're recording this.
Yes.
So the year is over halfway.
Yes.
So we are halfway towards 2020, which would be the start of a new decade, which is very, very interesting because I never thought that we would... couldn't fathom 2020,
yeah, I know, right?
30 years ago.
I feel like it's just yesterday that we thought that the computers were all going to go off at, Y2K.
I really thought that was going to happen. Also, I thought we would have flying cars by now, but Back to the Future lied to us.
Yes.
Or maybe cars that run on water, or, I don't know,
well,
food in pill form.
A lot of our advancements in our culture are held back because, I think a lot more because of greed.
Yeah.
We probably could have been past, using fossil fuels as our main source of, moving our cars around if there wasn't a bunch of money-grubbing people that are already in that business.
Yeah, it's kind of like anything else. When you have something good, you don't want to give it up at all. Don't give an inch. If you're making money on something and the money's just growing, you don't want to change. So we're kind of been stuck in a technological rut. Not a rut, but I mean like human advancement, cars and things like that. Things have expanded, greatly, and things have expanded technologically on the movie front, I think, immensely over the last 25 years.
The thing specifically in America, the only things that tech-wise that we care about is the tech that distracts us more than tech that actually is important.
Yeah, like phones, computers, TVs, radios, the things we consume. Basically, all the things that we pay for, we're more concerned about those advancements than things that are actually, good for society.
Yeah, it's how history has always been. There was gladiators, and that was a distraction. There's always a distraction of what's actually going on.
Well, you always need, I guess, entertainment to keep people peaceful or at ease or distracted about the horrors of the real world.
Yes.
And that's kind of why Stephen and I and many other cinephiles have delved into movies. For some people, it's a distraction. For some people, it's entertainment. For some people, it's a life thing. I know for me and Stephen, it's big part of our lives.
It's definitely can be a nice distraction sometimes, but I, over the years, have come more to engaging in film for its artistic significance. What it makes me feel on a deeper level other than just entertainment.
Very much so. And that very much leads into what we're talking about this week, which is kind of an overview, somewhat in-depth view of the Criterion Collection, the company that has been pushing the boundaries technologically-wise when it comes to movies and consumer-wise when it comes to movies and just educational when it comes to movies in general. I mean, literally, the Criterion Collection teaches you so much about world cinema, history in cinema, and just how to make movies in general. I know I've learned a lot of what I've talked about here. I've learned by watching the movies that they've released and the things that they've been able to include with those movies that have been very informative.
Yeah.
But before we get into that, and it's something I want to talk about briefly, and it does lead into what we're talking about today, and that is recently, and a lot of people have been talking about this, is Steven and I have talked about this many times. We wanted a Blu-ray release finally of David Lynch's Lost Highway, and we got one. But of course, like most things in life, you can't always get what you really, really want. But sometimes if you try, you get what you need, according to Mick Jagger and the Rolling Stones. But basically, what happened is many people thought that Criterion was going to release Lost Highway. They released Eraserhead, Blue Velvet, Mulholland Drive. They have all of David Lynch's short films. They have his animated series Dumbland, which is insane. So we're like, oh, it's just logical they're going to get Lost Highway. But Kino, like Kino typically does, Kino's a great company. I'm not knocking them in any way. They swoop in and they pick up some licensing to things that you didn't really expect that they would, and they did. And they've been making a constant push towards that. And we'll get into licensing a lot when we talk about Criterion, but they picked it up and they were going to release their own Blu-ray, their Blu-ray version. We're like, oh, okay, that sounds great. But when it came time to finally release the film, they actually pushed the release like a month in order to like try to get some extra things for it, and it just didn't work out. And basically, lo and behold, a few days before the movie was to be released on a new release day, David Lynch tweets out or sends a message out into the world saying, "I had nothing to do with this release that's coming up, so." It's not culled from the original negative. It's not a 4K. It's not a 4K remaster from the original negative or anything like that. So hopefully one day I'll be able to do that. It'll happen. And then Kino says, well, we reached out to David Lynch several times throughout the process to have his input, and he never responded back. And lo and behold, that they had a whole list of a big extras package. They wanted to do a full restoration. They wanted to do a new cover. They had the original cover that they had out. They wanted to release it with. They ended up having to strip all of that away because a little behind the scenes thing here is that in order for extras and for extras and even the cover packaging needs to be okayed by the company that they get the license from at Universal Pictures, and apparently also David Lynch. And I don't know if that's the condition for every single filmmaker, or if it's just this particular one.
Well, I mean,
think it's this particular one.
Lynch usually demands a lot of control when he does his movies. That's why he doesn't do a lot of movies, because he has to fight for that control before he does anything. So
right, he seems to be a super auteur, where he is in control of every aspect of the filmmaking process. And if he doesn't have full control, he'll walk away.
He'll wait until he gets it. Yeah.
I mean, I remember when Twin Peaks: The Return was in production, and there was something that, like, he had some disagreement with Showtime, and he was basically saying, "I'm going to walk away." And then there was this whole fan campaign push, like, there's no Twin Peaks without David Lynch and all this kind of stuff. They had all the actors tweet out about it or send messages on Instagram or wherever, no Twin Peaks without David Lynch. And yeah, so he's just one of those interesting things, like behind the scenes look of the production of how some of these releases are made, which now leads us to the Criterion Collection, because they take a lot of what's what I'm looking for, big steps, or a lot of time and patience and money and effort into putting out probably the best releases that they could possibly put out, at least in their opinion. I know there are some people out there who don't like Criterion Collection or some of the things they do when it comes to color correcting or boosting contrast, all that kind of technical stuff. And then there's some people who just get annoyed at the fact that people put Criterion on a pedestal, and like, if it's not Criterion, it's trash.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, some people take it a little. Some people take it a little far. I mean, I do think Criterion overall, maybe not in every aspect, but for the most part, when it comes to the actual transfer of the movie, they're probably top dog. I would say they're probably top dog, but
they do significant amount of restoration work and a lot of stuff. There's great behind the scenes videos that you can see on YouTube that show that they go like frame by frame to correct all the physical damage of a lot of these films. But we'll get into that. But first, we're going to take a trip back in the cinema discovery machine, back to the origins of Criterion, back to the 1980s. So get your leather out, get your metal. Maybe you're listening to some hair metal, whatnot.
Some White Snake.
Some White Snake, some Def Leppard, some Motley Crue, whatever. And it's 1984, and that is the year that Criterion was founded, and it was founded by three guys: Robert Stein, Aline Stein, Joe Madchuk, and then they were joined by someone named Roger Smith. And what is interesting is that the Criterion initially was a subsidiary, a subordinate, a imprint of a software company.
Mm-hmm.
A software company that made like educational CD-ROM programs. And I'm like, that's an interesting origin. But I'm just gonna run through this really quickly so we can get to the more interesting aspects later. So in 1985, the Steins, William Becker, and Jonathan B. Terrell founded the Voyager Company. And the Voyager, that's the company that made the CDs and all that kind of cool stuff. And the Criterion Collection was a subordinate of them. And in March 1994, looks like some German group bought 20% of Voyager, then for like $7 million, and then the four founders all split up like 20% ownership. And in 1997, the Voyager company went bye-bye, and basically they sold the company, it went someplace else, and I think that's when Criterion kind of became itself, really. And the remaining three partners were Aline Stein, William Becker, Jonathan Terrell. They owned the Criterion Collection Company, which had a business partnership, and still to this day has a business partnership with Janus Films. And Janus Films is kind of a distribution company that's been around since the 50s. They really put out a lot of foreign films. That's their thing.
Yeah.
That's like Fellini, Truffaut, Godard, Kurosawa, all the big heavy hitters that we all know from the Criterion Collection. That Janus Films is really the ones who get all that stuff. Bergman is a big one of theirs. But they also had a partnership with Home Vision Entertainment. And Home Vision Entertainment was in charge of like marketing and distribution and all that kind of, business type stuff. But in 2005, it was bought by Image Entertainment. And then Image Entertainment was responsible for that. Image Entertainment is another like one of these studio companies that put out movie releases. The only reason I think I know Image Entertainment is because I think they put out The Twilight Zone on Blu-ray a few years ago or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
They've put out like Blu-rays and things like that. But as of November of 2013, this is kind of more modern stuff, Sony is now in charge of handling distribution. I think Sony also presses the discs and things like that, because if many of you may not know this, a few years ago there's a bad batch of Criterion discs out there that have disc rot or whatever. They were pressed by some company in 2010, and they basically have started to go brown. The discs have started to go brown. The edges are starting to peel. I have a few discs in my collection that I still need to send to Criterion to get replaced because they're going bad. So it's kind of important that you're getting good production value with these discs, because that's your product. You want to make sure
it's your library, man. You gotta take care of your library. I mean, look, you might not watch some of these movies all the time, but I mean, you might get back around to it eventually.
Yeah, and there is a shelf life for DVDs and Blu-rays and things like that. They do break down over time.
Yeah,
which is kind of, I think, a problem with most physical media, is it's not necessarily forever. But we've talked about physical media in the past, but that's just one of the things. But it was 2010. These discs shouldn't be going bad this soon.
Yeah.
But basically, Criterion has been around since 1984 and is now 2019. So you could do the math on that. What is it, 35 years or so?
Sounds about right.
Yeah, I don't know. Hopefully,
I can't do math.
I gotta do it in my head. Like, okay, 10 years, 94, 2004. 2014, and 35. Okay, 35
You did it, man. You did it.
I did it.
I'm so proud of you.
I worked it out. So now we can get into the more interesting aspects of Criterion. And that's, like, the what makes Criterion, what makes it have such the reputation that it has. And a lot of it goes back to the very beginning, where just the format that they were releasing movies in was better than everyone else. They released their movies initially on Laserdisc.
Yeah.
And Laserdisc is a format that's now dead. There are Laserdisc enthusiasts out there, and Laserdiscs essentially are the prequels to DVDs.
Yeah, they're record-sized DVDs.
They're gigantic.
Yeah.
They are huge. And usually when you get like a movie, you would have like 4, 5, 6 discs, depending on how long the movie is, and you would have to flip the disc, like take it out and turn it over in during the movie and stuff like that. A lot of the early DVDs, you had to do that too. They would do two-sided discs.
Yeah,
and those were a mess because they would always scratch. They would always get They would always get like dirt and dust on them and fingerprints, and then the movie wouldn't work. But the thing with Laserdiscs is the one thing you could do with Laserdisc that you couldn't do with Betamax or VHS tapes is you could put out special editions that had extras. Mm-hmm. Extras is a big thing that's commonplace now. Granted, it's kind of going away a little bit, and it's kind of sad that most releases don't have the extras packages that they used to have, because the prices haven't necessarily gone down for these movies. If anything, they've gone up, but you're getting less for your money. But back in the day, Criterion really made it worth your while, and they still make it worth your while to buy their releases, because they would have deleted scenes, commentaries, things like that really were informative.
Yeah. What was the first Criterion Laserdisc? Can you think of it?
Oh my goodness!
I can tell you. Do you know it?
Oh, Citizen Kane.
Yes, good job.
Oh, good. Yes, got it. And what is also interesting is that a lot of the films that they put out back on Laserdisc are surprising, because some of them were not mainstream, but like today they're like, wow, I can't believe that was part of the Criterion Collection at one point. Ghostbusters.
Ghostbusters. Yeah.
2001: A Space Odyssey was another one. Citizen Kane is another one.
This was a time where there wasn't as much competition when it came to home media. So they were getting their hands on a lot of good stuff, a lot of some somewhat mainstream stuff, and nowadays it's so competitive, and some of these movies have had its time and are still popular things and still have life, and now they can't really get their hands on it anymore. But I think the collection has made up for it with going after cinema that you can't find anywhere else from other countries, and just like you said, special features. They go out of their way with a lot of releases to create new special features, to try to get with the filmmakers, cinematographers, talk with critics or historians.
Oh, and this practice of extras packaging continued over to Blu-ray, and continued over to DVD, then Blu-ray, and it's really, if anything, it's become even more expansive since, because you have access worldwide when it comes to communication to people. Like, you can find people easily now in the internet age, or in the digital communications age now, than you could, back in 1985. You know what I mean? It's easier to track people down, to get them to do interviews, to get them to do commentaries, and all this kind of stuff. Unfortunately, as time has gone on, a lot of the people that were involved in a lot of the releases for, a lot of the movies that were released by Criterion have passed away. The directors and people like that. But they have a lot of archival stuff that they also include, where it's if they were on some French television show doing an interview about the release of the movie when it came out, they'll have that as an extra, which is really interesting, because where are you going to find something like that? Maybe it's on YouTube. I doubt it. Who's watching that other than people like Steven and I? You know what I mean? It's very interesting, how they've gotten a reputation for having, being so expansive like that, or being so intricate like that. Also, something that's both a positive and a negative about those things is that a lot of those extras can only be on these releases. They don't carry over to other releases. For example, if a Criterion doesn't necessarily produce its own movie content, like they don't make it their own movies, they get the licenses to release these movies. If their licenses expire, they lose these licenses, and their releases go out of print, and some other company picks it up, they don't have access to the extras that were on Criterion unless they go and, I guess, purchase them from Criterion or purchase the license for it. And sometimes they're too expensive to do it, and the company that picked up the license for some specific movie doesn't want to spend the extra money to do so. So you really need to be made aware of that when it comes to different editions of different movies. Because like I said, Criterion does lose the license to several movies. They keep losing license to movies all the time. Luckily, there's such a network of fans now that you kind of know when things are going out of print, so you can grab them before you can't find them anymore. That's kind of nice.
Yeah,
I'll be honest, that's kind of nice.
Yeah, I mean, you get, as a Criterion collector, you have to decide on what kind of collector you want to be. Do you want to be what we call completionist, where you're trying to gain every spine number you can, and which means you need to basically get on it before you never know. Or you can be like, I would say, like me and Andrew, where we like to discover as we go, and we're not like necessarily trying to buy everything just to buy it. We're looking for interesting films that we can connect with, and Criterion has a lot of that, there's some movies in the collection that don't really interest me.
Very true. I mean, and there's such a wide range of content that it's so interesting. You have English language films, you have foreign language films, you have animated films, you have silent films. I mean, you've got complete collections of people's filmographies. Like, I'm pretty sure they have at least all of Akira Kurosawa, or maybe all of Ozu, or at least the large range of it. I know they may have all of Satyajit Ray. They have a lot of his stuff that's unreleased so far. And it's very interesting that they hold a lot of those back because, they're still a relative smaller company. And what is interesting is that they've expanded greatly, I think, over the last 10 years. I think they've become much more well-known. I don't know if I've just been, now that I'm in tune with the collection, that I've just made more aware of it, but I think it's more widely known now.
I would say it's more widely known because physical media is becoming more of a niche thing, We're becoming it's becoming more culty, like it's more popular because it's not as mainstream anymore.
But I'll say when it comes to the sheer volume of what they're releasing, I think has been has expanded greatly. Like every single month, they announce new releases.
Usually four releases.
Yeah, it's either 4 or 5, sometimes 6 releases, something like that. And so you're getting new Criterion editions every single month, and they range. They could be re-releases that were on DVD. They could be brand new stuff. They could be sometimes they'll create a box set of a couple of other releases. But what is interesting to me is what I found out is that I think for Criterion, I think Blu-ray changed everything when it came to collecting for them, because that's when I jumped in. I jumped in when they straight up buying Blu-rays. I didn't really buy DVDs unless the movie was only in that format. And then, of course, as it always happens, it ends up getting re-released on Blu-ray some years later.
As Andrew knows, I'm a strict Blu-ray buyer. I don't buy DVDs no matter what.
Yeah, I started collecting. I started collecting DVDs before I started collecting Blu-rays, and I've had to rebuy and all that kind of stuff. So I've fallen into that trap. But I think just Blu-ray has been so fortuitous to Criterion because now they've been able to go back and re-release movies that they had released on DVD and to some extent Laserdisc, and give them a new life essentially. They've not only they've gone back and found better material to make great restorations. That's the one thing that Criterion does that I think is probably their most important aspect of them is restoration and preservation is something that I think goes hand in hand, and they do that a lot. Like I said, there's a lot of behind the scenes great stuff that shows them making new masters from like original negatives and going in digitally and fixing things frame by frame, because a lot of the old film prints just they go bad, they decay. They got scratches, they got blotches, they got splices, they've got, they've got all kinds of stuff that's in there that you've got to correct, and they go in and correct all of them. And they don't, and they do it in a way that doesn't mess up the original intent or the original aesthetic of the movie too much.
Yeah, I mean,
there's a lot of things in there where people are more purist, where, is the coloring supposed to be like this?
Yeah.
Is the contrast supposed to be like this? And I'm like, the most important thing for me is, one, people can see these movies now. They look better than they've ever looked before, and they're widely available in a really good format.
Yeah, I mean, one of the biggest recent ones was the release of Midnight Cowboy, which has a little bit of a teal hue to it than compared to the original release of it. And personally, I don't think it really mattered. I mean, it still looks great. I mean, that people decide that they want to get all upset about. It's the internet.
Yeah, that's true. And one thing I've known or learned about over the years is that film prints, or at least good film, translates very well to HD. 35 millimeter, 65 millimeter, 75 millimeter, they really translate very well to the HD Blu-ray format. And what is also interesting I just want to discuss briefly, is that Criterion does do a lot of legwork when it comes to finding the best materials they can to work with. And that means you have to literally search the world over to find the best stuff, because sometimes you have to go to some archive in Europe or some archive here in the United States, or you've got to go to a personal collection that somebody has to find the best stuff, because before the modern age of movies, and before the modern age of restoration and collecting and all that kind of archiving stuff, basically, like, things were just spread out all over the place. You could buy a print of a movie, you could buy a dupe negative, or you could buy whatever, and it would just sit in your house for 40 years or whatever, and then that's it. It's kind of like sometimes you hear stories like, somebody had, I don't know, I think it was it like Magnificent Ambersons or something, where someone had it like a print of it like in a thing somewhere, or maybe it was like something like Fritz Lang's Metropolis, where that Blu-ray, it's not a Criterion release, but that Blu-ray by Kino, I think it's by Kino.
It is.
They had to combine elements from a 35 millimeter print and a 16 millimeter print, because there wasn't an entire movie in one film format. Like, there wasn't a complete set, and sometimes you have to mix and match stuff, and that's all the behind the scenes interesting stuff that some companies don't go that extra mile to do. So therefore you never see these movies at all. But luckily Criterion does go out and does do all those things. And the one thing that they also do that if you listen to me for a while now, is that I am an aspect ratio purist, fiend, lunatic, whatever you want to call it. I cannot watch a movie knowing that it is in the wrong aspect ratio. That's where I've gotten now in my film viewing life, because I feel like I'm not watching the movie properly, or I'm not really watching the movie at all. And what Criterion has done pretty much, not maybe kind of since the beginning, or at least since I've known them, and even the early DVD era, as well as the Laserdisc era, is they did something called letterboxing. Letterboxing, basically, back in the day, everybody who's old enough now, when you were growing up, all the TVs you had in your homes, all the TVs you saw anywhere, they were all square. Movies since 1955 have not been square. They've been widescreen presented. Basically, a wide aspect ratio. The movies are not square. They're not. That's not the way they've been. That's not the way they're projected in the movie theaters. But that's the way they were projected at. They were projected at home in the full screen 1331 format. And when you did that, when you took that movie, you were basically cutting out like a third of the frame of that movie, and you were only seeing certain things would be cut off, or they would do pan and scan, all this kind of nonsense. But since now we're in the widescreen era, all of that has been thrown away. You don't need letterboxing anymore. But letterboxing, what it would do, it would basically give you a widescreen movie in its intended aspect ratio at home on your square TV, your big tube TV. And they did that. They were on the forefront of that. So when DVDs came around, they continued that. And a lot of their early DVD releases that you can still kind of get your hands on now are letterboxed. And they kind of suck when you watch them on a widescreen TV, because initially on your square TVs, they would have black bars on the top and bottom to preserve that widescreen aspect ratio. But if you already have a widescreen TV, now they create bars on all sides of the screen. So you're basically watching like a rectangle imprint in your TV. Yeah. And depending on the size of your TV, you really can't see anything that's going on. But that's something that they were on the forefront of doing. But now we have anamorphic widescreen, so that's kind of a thing of the past. But yet again, they were ahead of their time. So, with all of that being said, Steven, where did you start collecting Criterions? Where did you first hear about it? How did your addiction start, basically?
Well, my addiction started when me and you started becoming friends. We started talking about it. But the first Criterions I bought was really not out of like any need to want to collect, to start collecting Criterions. It was just that they were particular movies that I was interested in, and I was just kind of starting to use Amazon as a resource to buy movies. And, I think one of the first ones I bought was 39 Steps. I wanted to get more into Hitchcock, and I saw that and I bought it, and it happened to be part of the Criterion Collection movie. And, also at the time, Christopher Nolan was starting to become popular, and I saw that he had a movie on, that I had never heard of, and it was called Following, and I bought that, and it happened to be a Criterion. I was like, what is this Criterion Collection? Didn't really think much of it. I bought a few. Right. I think I also bought, The Killing, Kubrick movie, early Kubrick, a few other ones, and that's really where it started. I didn't have any real, I wasn't really into boutique labels yet. I just wanted to buy movies.
And this is all, like, I don't mean to date you, but this is all within the last couple of years for you, right?
No. It's been it's been maybe about 7 years ago when I first bought them movies, and then I had them for a while, and then when I met you, it's been about 3 years ago maybe now or something.
Yeah. When we started doing Top 5 Weekly with our buddy Dan.
Yeah.
That was about 2016, because that's around when I started my YouTube channel. I was doing that. I was doing my YouTube channel as well as Dan's show at the same time. That's when I met you. And yeah, I've been collecting myself. I've talked about when I started collecting about 2007, but Criterions, I heard vaguely. I remember one day I was sitting having lunch in college with somebody, with my buddy Curtis, and he said, I think he mentioned Brazil. Mm-hmm. Terry Gilliam's Brazil, and how it was part of some collection where it's like numbered and all this kind of stuff. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. I didn't think anything of it. I didn't know what Criterion was. I was collecting just mainstream DVDs, like new releases every week at the time, then getting some old like indie stuff like Pulp Fiction and all that kind of stuff. Just building up my library at the time. I didn't think anything of it. And I really did not start collecting Blu-ray. I didn't start collecting Criterion seriously until I went to my first Criterion sale at Barnes & Noble. And that was about 2011, I want to say. But before then, I had bought a couple on Amazon, because for some reason Amazon had not a collection, but they had a Criterion sale of their own. I didn't know what they were. I had no idea what they were, but I was like, oh, these movies are interesting. I've heard about it. It was like things like Breathless and M and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. and I was like, oh, that's
Yeah.
very interesting.
Yeah, and
And so I just bought a bunch of them.
yeah, at first for me, I was just going after things I recognized. I would go after something like maybe like, like I said, from directors that I'd heard of, or more modern films. The few more modern films they would maybe carry in there, Fear and Loathing, or something like that. I would go after. I went after a lot of the Cronenberg. Like I went after Scanners pretty early, because I'd seen that at some point early in my life, and
I'm trying to find. I'm looking now and I can't find, because I bought a whole crop of Blu-rays at that sale. And the sale was like spring of 2010, and I know I bought like Wings of Desire, and I bought like Yojimbo and Sanjuro. I think those are like the two like first like Kurosawa films I ever had in my collection. It was that Blu-ray 2-pack. Here we go. Yeah, it was April of 2011. Okay. Yeah, because I'm looking on. Luckily, Amazon, like, they always tell you what you ordered when, so you don't rebuy stuff, bastards. Anywho, so that was when I bought that. So I probably didn't buy. Yeah. So then the Criterion sale was that July, and I think the first two I ever bought, I think I've said this many times, was Darjeeling Limited and The Thin Red Line were the first two I bought at that sale, and it's very interesting. Wow, I can actually do this. Oh, this takes me back. What were you doing in 2000? Yeah, I bought Yojimbo, I bought America Lost and Found, and I bought Blowout. America Lost and Found is that BBS box set that has like Easy Rider and 5 Easy Pieces. I bought those.
I bought Blowout pretty early too.
I bought Blowout pretty early. Those Blowout was one of the first ones I watched, and I was like, wow, this is amazing. And then I watched like Easy Rider early on and 5 Easy Pieces, all that kind of stuff. But then the following year, 2012, is when I really started going hard, like going seriously hard, like at the sale, when I was buying like 6 or 7 titles every time I would go. That was when my friends and I we would go there early to try to beat like some rush that we thought was going to happen, because in the area I live in, there's a lot of colleges nearby, a lot of artsy colleges, so you figure there's going to be like people who are going to be into foreign film that are going to want to go buy these releases. So we thought we would get there before they would. And lo and behold, we would go there, and they some of them would be there. But that's when we met a couple of people there. We would just sit there for like hours, just like talking about these different movies, browsing over and over again.
Isn't that the best?
It was such a communal gathering of cinephiles, budding cinephiles, and we were buying stuff that like most of the stuff was blind buys. It's like that's like when I bought Shallow Grave by Danny Boyle.
That's my favorite.
I knew who he was, and I'm like, damn, but that release had just come out, and people were like, and I was like, oh yeah, I'll buy this, and I just went crazy, bought a bunch of stuff, and every year I go there and I buy a bunch of stuff. But now since I've started my YouTube channel, I've been doing like I've been shooting footage while I'm there to show people like, oh, this is what my local Barnes & Noble has in stock. And this is what their setup looks like, and you can see the de-evolution of the physical media section at my local Barnes & Noble. How their movie section went from like, you would have like there was like a back and front large like shelving unit full of Criterions, and now it's boiled down to like 2.5 rows of Criterion releases, and I'm like, oh, this is. What a disgusting sight.
So I got a couple questions for you.
Yeah, do it.
What do you think is one of the most you've spent on at a sale?
Entirely?
No, just like one month. One particular occasion.
I'll say in 1 month, typically it's probably the July sale. The July leg, because it's every July and every November at Barnes & Noble. And honestly, we don't know how long that's going to keep going, because Barnes & Noble is kind of like the last mainstream bookstore chain in the country. And they actually just got sold to some company.
Well, I can actually they're
closing.
I can actually give you some news on that a little bit. I was actually, when I was there this past week to buy some Criterions, the lady there was telling me that things actually are looking up with the new owners, because their strategy is it makes more sense. They're thinking about kind of going in, basically making neighborhood Walmart versions of Barnes and Noble, making them smaller, putting them in more communities and not these massive stores. So
that's good from I would say a bookstore sense. What that means for
the Criterion's for movie, the movie portion, that might mean that might go away.
Yeah, because I know a lot of stores around me have gotten rid of their movie sections years ago.
Yeah.
Like right now, there's only 2 stores within an hour drive of me, or I would say 45 minutes. That have them now. There's one in my state that has one, and then there's one right over the border in the next state that has them. But there's another Barnes and Noble, or 2 Barnes and Nobles in my state that don't have movie sections anymore, and they haven't had any for forever. But when it comes to going back to what you're saying, the most I've spent in 1 month, man, there was 1 month, and this was I think before I met you, where I bought 30 titles or 30 something, 33 titles or something like that. That was probably my biggest month. And if you figure, I don't even know if that included box sets, but it was 30 or 33 or 34 titles or something like that. I know you've gone very extensive.
Yeah, I can't say how many. It was in that range, maybe a little more. I know I spent over $1,000 in a month one time.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever gone that high.
Yeah.
I think money wise, 300, 400, something like that. Because to be honest, I mean, people hearing these numbers and are like, "Oh man, I can't believe you spent that much."
It's because because one single title is $20 a pop.
Yeah, not only that, but regular priced Criterion title that that's on the ticket is $39.95 or $39.99. So typically, the 50% off sale gets it down to $20.
Yeah.
But if you also have the Barnes and Noble membership, which is a yearly long membership, costs $25. That knocks off another 10%, so you can get them for around $18 from 40 to 18 is a significant reduction in price. What used to happen, and I don't know if Stephen came late to this game, but I know I've done this.
You used to be able to stack, yeah.
Oh, we could stack coupons because if you also signed up for the membership, they would send you coupons every month in your email, and it would be 15% or 20%. I typically kept getting 20%. Some people got 15. I don't know.
There were times where I got some 25s and 30s.
And anywho, you could go in there, you could stack them up. There would be times where I've gotten box sets that were $100, like the Jacques Demy box set, where you take the 50% off, plus 10%, plus 20%, and next thing you know, you're paying $35 for a $100 box set. Mm-hmm. Needless to say, Barnes & Noble caught up to that, and they don't let you use coupons anymore.
No, you might get lucky every once in a while that somebody doesn't know that you can't use them, and you might get another 10% off or 20% off. But
I'll say this to people out there: make friends with the store managers at your local Barnes & Noble, because that happened to me once where I tried to do it, and then they called the manager over, and the manager, I guess, recognized me or whatever, because I used to go into my Barnes & Noble every week just to look at books and whatnot, so they got to recognize me, and then she did it for me one time, but that was the last time I was able to do it, and that was on a regular release. That wasn't on a box set or anything. But that's why we take advantage of these sales when they happen in July and in November. Now, everybody doesn't have to do that. That's just something that Steven and I do, because we're collectors at heart of physical media, and Criterion puts out a great physical media product. And for the rest of the year, typically Criterion releases can be found other places. They're not only at Barnes & Noble. You can buy them directly from the Criterion.com website. Typically, they're full price there. So not full price, but they're $30.
Yeah, there's a couple times throughout the year where they do a 50% off, flash sale. Yeah,
you do have to pay for shipping.
Shipping, it makes them $25 a piece basically. So it's not as great of a deal, but yeah, I mean, Amazon usually has a lot of the stuff priced pretty well. Definitely discounted better than buying it straight from Criterion.
Oh yeah, typically. For a Criterion release right now, if you go on Amazon.com, a typical Blu-ray release from them is like $25 to $27, which is about like, what's that, like 30 something percent off?
Yeah,
of regular
35% off.
Yeah,
maybe.
35%, which is not bad. If you want to buy that movie right now, you can do it.
It just depends. It depends on the release. It depends.
Yeah,
on...
if you want to wait for the sale, you save like $10 essentially. Around that, because you figure now, depending on your state, Amazon charges you tax, and if you don't have Amazon Prime, you got to pay for shipping or whatever your circumstance is. It all depends. But Criterion has grown extensively, and there's a lot of titles now. We are approaching spine number 1,000 because, as I said, each movie typically has a number. Sometimes no. Sometimes it's just the box set that has a number and the individual movies don't. Sometimes the individual movies do have a number and the box set itself has a number as well. It really all depends on
how significant I get, or how significant the release is. Like if it's something like the Martin Scorsese project thing where I think all the movies did get spine numbers, but I don't know if the box set did.
So each of them, like I said, are numbered. The Laserdiscs were numbered as well, but I think when the DVDs came around, they started renumbering. Yeah. And they started from number 1, but when the when they made the transition from DVD to Blu-ray, they just continued on with the numbering. They didn't start renumbering. Yeah. Unfortunately, for those of you out there who want to know what number 1 is, it's out of print, and it's a DVD of Jean Renoir's The Grand Illusion. Yeah. Or La Grande Illusion, as they say. The Grand Illusion, which is, you can find it on Blu-ray from like Lionsgate.
It's Studio Canal.
From Studio Canal. Yeah. And what's also interesting about Criterion is that sometimes they do work with other companies across the pond, like BFI or Studio Canal, or other places that are curators of hard to find foreign films. When it comes to other releases from Criterion, like we said, they do giant box sets. They do box sets that can be trilogies. They do box sets that can be 20 movies long. They just did that Ingmar Bergman box set, which everybody just went bananas over and got it. I know I got one. Steven, I think you got one too. I know people are picking them up now at this sale. I'm really glad that
now they're back in, now that it seems that they're stocked up, because when it first came out you couldn't get one unless
I think they sold out quick. It's not a cheap set.
No, I grabbed mine quick. And that's why you make friends with your Barnes and Noble people. They set it aside for you, and that's what happened with me. So
another word of warning for those of you shopping at Barnes and Noble. Your local Barnes & Noble may do something that is so unforgiving, that something that Steven and I hate more than anything is they put this goddamn spider wrapping
for some reason they think
on the box sets.
Let's put some wire around this very expensive thing that collectors buy, where it's not just the films that they're buying, but they're buying the packaging. Let's fuck up that packaging. That'll make them want to buy it more.
There's like these four claw-like wire things that are attached to like a sensor, so that like when you go through the detector, it detects whether you pay for something or not. They take it off before you leave, but sometimes whoever puts them on so tight that they create like grooves in the packaging.
And sometimes impressions in the packaging.
Destroy them. Yeah. Sometimes they crunch them. And it's just so bad. And it's like a lot of these packagings that we haven't even touched on. We touched on packaging a little bit in an episode before, but some of these packagings are elaborate, or some of them are done with, thin cardboard or something like that. That's gonna be prone to not being manhandled in any way. Yeah. But when it comes to other releases, they do have a line of something called Eclipse sets. Yeah. And Eclipse sets are DVD sets that I can't remember what number they're up to now.
I think it's like close to 50, isn't it? And like 40 in the 40s, I think.
Yeah, you know what? I'm gonna look it up, but I want to say that these sets are typically only on DVD, and they are numbered, but they don't count.
They're not part of the main collection.
Yeah, they're not part of the main collection in any way. They are.
They would call them, lesser known titles from big filmmakers, You know, like you got some early Bergman in there, early Ozu. You know,
Yeah,
like,
yeah, and they do start, from number one. But let's see what because I know, yeah, they're up to, man, they're up to significant. Yeah, they're pretty. I think they're past 40. Hold on, because I got a set. Yeah, because I have the most. I don't collect these typically unless they're something special. I do want like all of them though. That's a secret ambition of mine.
early Bergman was the last one, wasn't it?
No, I think early Bergman was like the first one. There's 46 was Ingrid Bergman's Swedish years that came
That's
out.
what that's
that
what
came
I was
out last
thinking of.
November. That may be the most recent one. I'm actually
They don't put out a lot of them. They don't put out a lot of Eclipse.
They don't, but they do. But they're nice though, and I know a lot of people don't. Maybe not don't like them. I honestly can't say what they like and what they don't like. But I'll say this: they're of movies that probably wouldn't see the light of day on physical media unless they were put out in this format.
Yeah,
I'll say that. That's the one thing that's good about them is that at least you have these movies available to you to watch and to own. They're not and they typically they're not.
They don't put as much
Yeah.
into the restoration.
They don't put really much, or if anything at all, into the restoration unless it's. I'm assuming unless it's really bad. If it's unwatchable, they gotta do something.
Yeah.
Come on now.
Yeah.
You better off-
It's
might
one of
as well
them.
just
It's one of them
put it out.
things. I mean, we can talk a little bit about like some of the, somewhat not as compared to other boutique labels. I would say Criterion doesn't necessarily do packaging as well as some of the other ones. I mean, we've talked about it before. Arrow is pretty legit when it comes to packaging.
Yeah, they have a huge, like, awesome packaging game.
And
Where
they also put out things that would probably be Eclipse series movies and put them out on Blu-ray instead of just DVD.
Yeah, that's true. And also, yeah, I was right. The Eclipse Series 46, Ingrid Bergman's Swedish Years, was the last one put out.
Yeah.
The first one is early Bergman.
Okay, I got confused with that.
And then, like, I have a couple of these. I have, like, late, I think there's an early Ozu set that I have. There's two early Ozu sets. Like, one's comedies and one's, like, dramas, I think.
Yeah.
And I think I got one of those. I really want the late Ray set.
Yeah, that's the one. That's the only one I have.
Yeah, that's the one I want. What's crazy is I keep seeing that like at a local place that sells like used stuff, and it's like $15, and I'm like, I'm gonna buy you. I'm really gonna buy you.
That's a good little discussion, real quick.
Right.
What is out of all the things that you've discovered from the Criterion Collection? What did you think is the most profound thing that you've discovered? Filmmaker, movie, whatever.
Damn. That's a loaded question.
I know, right?
I've learned. I'll be honest. I've learned so much from watching these movies that my entire like film education is basically been gotten from Criterion Collection, and I know I've mentioned I've watched. I've took a couple of film classes in college and stuff like that. I've learned more by just watching these movies and the extras than I've learned from anything. My whole educational like life was paled in comparison to what I've learned by watching movies. Put that on a blurb somewhere. But I'll say this: some of the filmmakers, I don't think I would have ever discovered had I not had access to them through Criterion Collection. People like Truffaut, Fellini, Bergman. I had always known who Bergman was, but I didn't know where to watch his movies.
Yeah, you know me. Mine is Satyajit Ray. I mean, that's...
Ray's a recent one that blew my... Like, to be honest, Ray, nobody knows who Ray is. And I'm like, why does nobody know who this is? This guy is amazing.
I mean, even amongst a lot of film cinephiles, he's not as really talked about as much. I mean, sure, if you're familiar with the Criterion Collection, you've probably heard his name, but a lot of people just don't know who he is. I mean, he's not talked about.
I collected Criterion for years, and I had never heard of him.
Yeah, I mean,
until the Apu trilogy box set was announced, and even then, I'm like, who's that? What are these movies?
Yeah,
And then, like, when the next sale happened, like, after the release had come out, people were buying it. And, like a lot of people were posting about it, like, on Twitter and Instagram and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, apparently I'm not part of this cool party that everybody's been a part of. But that box set, you can learn everything you need to know about Ray in that box set by those 3 movies, as well as all of the extras. They delve into his career, his backstory, the way he made his movies, why his movies are so significant, why they are different than any other films that were made in India at the time. And that's what a lot of these box sets do, is they give you a lot of wealth of information. The Jacques Demy box set is the same thing. You get a lot about Jacques Demy, his relationship with the other French New Wave filmmakers, and just all this kind of just contextual stuff that you just don't get by just watching a movie. Yeah. That's the one thing is with a lot of these foreign films is it's not only the movies themselves, it's the context around them that make them so good.
Yeah, and that's what's so important about the collection is, for a lot of us, Criterion Collection's an American company, and
yes, unfortunately it's limited to here, and Canada can get them too.
Sure, I mean anybody can get them, but it's primarily an American company, and for especially for obviously for foreign films, it's good to have that somebody help explain
right.
the context of the movie for you to better understand it and appreciate it.
Yeah, I also do want to say they have expanded to the UK since 2016. They've been putting out releases there. It's not anywhere near the amount that we have here, but they have Criterion Collection in the UK now. Yeah. Kind of similar to now we have Arrow Video here in the US, but Arrow's putting out a lot more stuff here than Criterion's putting out there.
Yeah.
But it is that goes to the whole region encoding thing. It's 2019. It's kind of bullshit.
Just get yourself a region-free player.
No, that, but this shit shouldn't really exist anymore, but it kind of does, I guess, for money reasons.
It's a money thing.
There's some tech stuff with it where in the UK, like, their encoding is different than the way our video encoding is. They run on PAL, which is faster than we run NTSC, so it's a whole big thing. Anywho, that's something for another time, but let's just say there's a reason why different areas of the world can only watch certain movies, or only have certain movies available to them. But like Steven said, there are region-free Blu-ray players, there's region-free DVD players, there's region-free 4K players now, so you can see it if you want to. Also, they've also tried, it's something I think we should talk about here before we go, is that Criterion now has made strides to expand their exposure past the physical media realm.
Yeah.
We've all talked about Filmstruck extensively. Yeah. So that was kind of not their first foray into streaming world. Before then, they had a partnership with Hulu for a couple of years, where you could stream a good portion of the Criterion Collection library on Hulu. That's kind of the reason why I first bought Hulu, paid the subscription for that. But then we had Filmstruck, which was a partnership between, TCM and Criterion and Warner Media and all that kind of stuff. That went into the shitter because niche market and all that bullshit. We talked about it many times. We're
past it now.
We're past it. We're above it.
Yeah, we have the Criterion channel now.
Now we have the Criterion channel, which is something I think is solely owned and operated by Criterion Collection, kind of taking that format from Filmstruck now into the streaming world, because the way people consume movies is different than the way they've consumed it in the past, and you need to expand in order to stay alive.
It's an interesting thing, a company that is, its whole business model is about selling physical media, but it needs to have a streaming service to help, I guess, supplement, because I mean, for some people, when they are buying physical media, they don't buy something unless they've maybe seen it. It's some people ain't like us, where we're willing to just blindly buy something because we trust in the Criterion name.
That's true, and it gives them more brand exposure.
Yeah,
it's another marketing tool, and it introduces people, I think, to Criterion Collection that perhaps didn't know about it before.
It's also kind of what you're saying. It also can maybe gauge the audience to possible other physical releases. What if they put something that they haven't physically released on Criterion channel, and they see that something's getting a lot of clicks and a lot of views, and And that
Well,
might be like,
yeah.
oh, maybe we should release that physically.
Yeah, and it does also lead to like what I said touched on earlier, is that they do have a lot of things in the library that they haven't released in the physical media format.
Because
world
the
yet.
licensing for streaming is different than licensing for
Very true.
physical media.
Not only that, but just like perhaps it's a movie that is just so, deeply buried in someone's catalog that it's not perhaps monetarily worth it to go through the whole restoration problem and the printing of the discs and selling and all that kind of stuff. They're not going to make any money off of, so they can put it on, the streaming platform and not have to, and just people can see it. You know what I mean? But what they've also done, what I really like, is they've put a lot of their Criterion Collection editions. I put editions in quotes for some reason. They put them on there with the extras included.
Yeah.
Very important, because the reason why a lot of people are buying these releases is because of the extras packages that include audio commentaries, interviews, all this kind of stuff. And they're putting them on there with all these so you can get the physical media Criterion experience through streaming the Criterion channel, and you're basically paying what the average is, for a streaming service. It's not an astronomical amount.
Yeah, you can pay for a
what's,
year, and I think I paid $90 or something.
Yeah, I paid monthly because I'm not like Steven. But I think it's like $10 a month, something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, $10.99.
And we discussed it back before about how people think that maybe that's too much for a site that's running old films, and I'm like,
right.
Well, I mean it's historically significant. It's not. I know a lot of people just want to watch new stuff, but I'm, for me, I am watching new stuff. It's stuff I've never seen.
Yeah, and Criterion has streamed on other services before, like I mentioned. They've also streamed on Canopy, and
they've released some stuff on Amazon too.
Yes, they have. But Canopy, I think, was something that's a service that's through your library, your local library. If you have a library card,
apparently
I think you can sign up for that for free.
Apparently that's not working out for the libraries very well. Apparently.
Oh, is it not?
Now I've heard recently that they were discussing it on a Criterion Now, which is a podcast that is talks all of course primarily about Criterion. They were saying that Canopy. Apparently, it's costing the libraries a lot of money.
I could only imagine.
Yeah.
I could only imagine. I mean, libraries are already providing a free service to us when it comes to books and things like that. I mean, I've recently, re-signed up for a library card and whatnot because they offer, digital services now where you can get audiobooks and e-books now and check them out like you checked out regular books. But they probably aren't making money off of that either. I mean, it's a government funded thing, I believe. If I'm not mistaken, I was looking for something else and I can't find it. But anywho, yeah, that's Criterion in a nutshell. Now I'm just looking for what they said about Canopy here. Yeah, it was on Hulu Plus and all that kind of stuff. But what I also did here, and before we check out, is that when Warner Media releases their streaming service, which is supposed to come out later this year or perhaps next year.
I think it was supposed to be like November or December.
Yeah, they said it was. Yeah, I've seen like Q9 of 2019. It's like that's like economic term for like the last 3 months of the year.
Yeah.
Anywho, they could have pushed it by now. Who really knows? But all I know is that like apparently you'll be able to get the Criterion channel like as a part of it or something like that. Like it'll be available via through it or something like that.
Yeah.
So
as a part of a bundle.
That's my assumption, but we'll see when that happens. But yeah, that's pretty much Criterion Collection in a bundle. The one thing I do want to mention before we check out
again,
we're approaching spy number 1000, and with the new releases that were just announced, I think that's going to get us up to like 997.
It's looking like the next month that's announcing might be the 1000 or maybe the one after that. We'll see, because they might do some re-releases to bump it up.
Don't do that. That's such a tease.
They might wait to the November,
Yeah, because right now, because they the releases they announce each month are like several months ahead. I'm kind of laying out
3 months, usually 3 months ahead.
Yeah, usually. So they just announced the September releases.
Yeah, so we got October coming up in the next couple weeks, and
yeah,
and if it isn't in that month, part of me is thinking they're going to do a couple re-releases and bump it to November is what I'm thinking. But I know.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
I'm not a big fan of that. Yeah, they're up to. What is
What's our last number? Where are we at?
I just said, let's see, out of the, Clooney Brown, which they just announced, the Ernst Lubitsch film, is $9.97. I'm looking here because they also announced, remember we talked about, they announced polyester. There's another number here next to polyester polyester would be $9.95, but there's another number here that says 210. Is that the Laserdisc number? Maybe the Laserdisc number. Oh my goodness, I am cycling through 900 releases here. It's gonna take some time.
Yeah, it's probably not worth it, buddy. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it is the Laserdisc number. Okay. Yeah, the way it has it set up on Wikipedia, you can see all the releases. It's got Grand Illusion number 1, but next to it's got Spine number, and then it has Laserdisc number, and then it's got like name and if it's on Blu-ray or if it's an art house release. Another thing we didn't discuss is their DVDs had an essential art house imprint that I think they've gotten rid of. Yeah, I'm pretty sure they have.
Yeah, they don't do that.
Basically, it's like a bare bones version of like a movie that they've released in a proper release. Something like Rashomon had an essential release. So basically, like, it doesn't have like the restoration or anything like that. Essentially, it's kind of but it's cheaper. That's why they made it, so people could have access to it, but they don't have to pay the full price for it. But that's something that's kind of defunct now. Now we're into Blu-rays and past DVDs and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, so now that's it. Now, Steven, you gotta get us out of here. I'm gonna keep talking forever.
I will stop you.
Stop me! Somebody stop me!
We could, yeah. Good job, Jim. We could get deeper. We probably will. This is kind of a part 1, maybe. Maybe we'll do another. When we get to 1,000, maybe we'll come back around and discuss
we'll
1,000.
Like an in-depth, like, of some special releases or whatnot, or like what are our favorite releases, or
maybe we'll do a list episode of some of our favorite releases and discuss each release. But for now, that will be it for this episode of the Cinema Discovery Project. Andrew, where can you be found?
You can find me on Twitter at Capzilla06, as well as my YouTube channel, Capzilla Productions.
And you can find me on Facebook, Stephen Billings. You can also find me posting all my goodies that I buy on my Instagram, that is Cinema Discovery Project. You can find the audio for this podcast on Podbean, Apple Podcasts, not iTunes anymore, apparently.
Yeah, they're getting rid of it.
It's dead. And that will be it for this episode. Thank you for listening, and hey, keep on watching them movies.
I know I will.